class we are doing a rentals demonstration. We're going to go through how to create rentals, basically tie a piece of equipment to a customer. Main goals by the end of this video, what we should be trying to be able to accomplish is setting up the rental inventory, putting equipment on rent, and have a basic understanding of how the billing works with rentals. And we'll go through a few scenarios of the billing and do an overview of how it goes into QuickBooks. We won't take a deep dive, but we will look at how to bill with the software. And then depending on time, I'd also like to show a couple different ways we can manage pickups, deliveries, returns or exchanges, whether that's through a route schedule or through like a task for a reminder. Now, to get started, the first thing we need to do before we're able to do really anything in the software is we have to set up our inventory that we want to rent out. Now, if you are tracking or plan to track serialized inventory or your equipment with serial numbers, we're going to have to set that up on the rental info, rental inventory list. If you do not plan on tracking serial numbers or serializing your inventory whatsoever, all you need is an item in QuickBooks for whatever piece of equipment you're renting. Now, the advantage of using a serial number is we're able to track metrics on that individual piece of equipment as far as looking at total revenue generated versus any costs or repairs associated. Without that serialized or that serial number for that piece of equipment, we're not able to track that information. Now, to set up a piece of equipment with the serial number on my rental inventory list, I first have a drop-down that's going to show me all the items from QuickBooks. Now, I've got an item in QuickBooks called pump, and let's say it's a piece of rental equipment. You also, if you're in the portable toilet industry, roll-off. This could be your 10-yard, 20 or 30-yard dumpster, or your item for portable toilet, handicap unit, or hand washing station, something like that. I'm just going to use the item pump as an example. I then can put in a serial number. So I'm just going to give this one, we'll just P1000. Now, I can track a separate daily, weekly, and monthly charge just by editing these boxes, or if I edit one of them, so let's say my monthly rate is 85, it'll prompt me, do I want to update the daily and weekly charges based on that new monthly rate? Now, the next field over is rented to, and this is technically a list of our customer names. We never, I'll repeat that, we never assign a piece of equipment to a customer on this screen. The customer name will automatically be filled in for you when you actually rent out this piece of equipment. Right now, we're just building a list of the available equipment to rent. Now, once you have a serial number generated, you'll notice that the serial number is blue and underlined for that piece of equipment. And it's a kind of an underlying theme in the service program that everything that's blue and underlined acts like a link that you can click on to drill down and see the details. So if I double-click on the serial number, this is when I now get this individual piece of equipment's detail, where I could track, like a market cost, replacement cost, size, condition, maybe the vendor who you purchased it from, the date, the original purchase price. You also have custom fields that you can set up, and you can just click in the white space over here and start typing a label. So you can track any information you need to. The transactions is going to show me a history of what transactions this piece of equipment is on. Repairs would show me all the repairs associated to this equipment. And we'll come back after we do a little bit of work here in a few minutes, and we'll come look at these areas again and see how it populates. Billing history would show me, again, history of every time it was billed. And the file link is where I could attach any document to this piece of equipment. And by document, I mean you can also attach pictures, video. So if you have, a current picture of the unit you want to keep on file, you can attach that here. If you have an original purchase receipt or any service receipts or maintenance receipts, anything like that that you want to keep attached to this piece of equipment, you can just hit Browse and then select the file. Up here in the top right, we have our metrics, so we would see the total income or revenue generated by this unit versus the total repairs, and you would then have your net income. Now, setting up, if you have thousands of pieces of equipment, in a perfect world, that would be great if we were all able to maintain all that and keep it out in the field from month to month. But it would be a pain to set up if we had to do it one by one. So we've added this bulk add serial numbers, which is going to help us. It really helps if you already have your serial numbers in some sort of sequential order, because what we can do is just, for instance, pick our item pump, and I could put in my daily, weekly, monthly rates. So my daily is 3. Then what do we have? 21, 15, and 85. Let's say we want to add 9 more pieces of equipment to give me a total of 10, and I have a prefix of the letter P, and then my next serial number is going to be 1001. So now I've got 10 pieces of equipment here, or 11 actually. Now we have another way. This is obviously tracking the equipment with the serial numbers. We have another way if you have multiple locations, different yards maybe that you're pulling the equipment from, or different warehouses. We have a quantity location maintenance, and it's a little button up here with the little barcode symbol next to it. If we click that, we'll get a screen that we can then go in and enter the current balances of the quantities of these equipment. So I could go pump, and let's say I've got a warehouse and I've got 11 of them in stock, or I've got 11 total of this piece of equipment that I could rent out, and it's located in the warehouse. If you double click this, you'll get a list that you can pick from and set up a new warehouse location. So maybe we have a second location. So maybe I only have 5 at that warehouse, and then I have 6 in the other one. Rental repair list is going to show me any tasks or work orders that were created that relate to any of this rental piece of equipment. And we'll come back here. I just want to show you, bring up the screen. This is where you can see a full history if you're tracking repairs or services done for the rentals. Now we are compatible with 2 different codes here. We can use barcodes or QR codes for our rental inventory to help in the process. The newest feature we've added are QR codes. That is where you can take a QR code, just so everyone understands, is a kind of a modern barcode. It's a square shape. You may have seen it on like advertising, like movie posters, stuff like that, different ads where you can actually scan it with the camera on your phone. And once you scan that QR code, it would do something. With our app, with the mobile solution, if you put QR codes on all the pieces of equipment, you could just simply scan that piece of equipment to mark it as being delivered or set on a site. It also geolocates it and puts it on a map so you could see where all your pieces of equipment were based on the driver who scanned it when he did that delivery. When we hit QR code, this little button, it's going to bring up a web menu where we are able to take a code and attach it to a piece of rental equipment. Now this code is generated automatically from us, and you can actually order the QR code labels from our website. If you want more information on QR codes, you can reach out to our sales department. You could send an email to sales@westernsoftware.com or simply give us a call, 866-480-1879, option 1. So we've got equipment set up. If I had other equipment, so if I had some sort of sprinkler heads here, I can just select that piece of equipment just like we set up the pumps, and I can give it a serial number. So now our equipment's set up. I'm going to go ahead and hit close on this window here. That'll save that equipment. Now, to actually enter a new rental, whether you want to call it a transaction, an invoice, or an order, to basically tie a piece of equipment to a customer, we need to go to Rental Info, enter a new rental. So this is the screen we call a rental transaction. This is where we can pick a customer, pick our equipment, put in the different billing dates, any notes, print delivery tickets, invoices, send stuff to QuickBooks. Everything when you enter a rental order can be controlled right from this screen as far as managing that customer with that equipment. The first thing I'm going to do is pick a customer here. Now after I pick a customer, the next thing I want to do is tell the software what we're renting out to this customer. So I can go right here in the item and I can pick my pump. And that'll fill it in for me. If I have the option turned on in the software to see the rental warehouse locations, and that's where I did that quantity location maintenance and I set up those two warehouses and put in the different quantities, I could then select how many we're pulling from the warehouse. So let's say we're going to take it from warehouse 2, and I pick my serial number. If I double click on my quantity, it brings me up a little window and shows me, okay, at this second location, I had 6, I just rented out 1, there's 5 left. So if you ever get into a scenario where you're renting out equipment, maybe in one location that doesn't have enough to fulfill the order, you could select the second location to fulfill the order. And it'll actually give me a pop-up warning if I don't have enough at a particular location to fulfill the order. So for instance, if I was trying to rent out, like 8 of these, it's going to tell me I don't have enough on this location, and it's going to pop up and say, okay, I need to fill 2, where I want to get those 2 from, and I could select the other location to pull those other 2 from. All right, so we've got our piece of equipment on rent, and you can see here it's using the default price of this monthly rate of $85. If I double-click in the price, it's going to pull up and show me a window where I can see my daily, weekly, and monthly charges. Now, the billing increment controls the charge over here on the right. So if I flip this to daily, you can see my price now is based off a daily billing increment. Do weekly, the same thing, or if I flip it back to monthly, I'm now basically telling the software I want to calculate this rental based on a monthly rate. We have the option to prorate or run once. An item could be one or the other, or neither, but never both. Now, what prorating does, if our billing increment is monthly, if someone rents something out in the middle of a billing period, this unit would then be prorated. That $85 would either be increased or decreased depending on how many days they had that rental out before you ran your billing. So if your billing period was from 8/1 to 8/28 and they rented out on the 14th of August, they're going to be prorated from the 14th to the end of your billing cycle. And then they would be a full month the next time in every other billing until they returned it. Run once tells our software to only put whatever charge we marked as run once on the first billing. basically the first time you invoice it, it would show up, any charge would, but then any future billings, that would not show up. So it works great for any one-time fees, delivery, pickup, fuel surcharge, damage waiver, stuff like that. We can just add let's say there's a delivery charge. Now, I can add regular items from my QuickBooks item list, like delivery, that aren't on my serialized item list. So I'm not going to pick a serial number. And let's say there's just a $15 fee. I'm going to tell it to run once. And I'm going to change my billing increment to flat rate. And that will tell the software, don't do anything with that $15. It's just bill the $15 on its first invoice because we told it to run once. Now, once a unit has been billed that is marked run once, the date run will automatically be filled in for you. Do not put in anything in that date run, because if our software sees something in there when it comes time for billing, it does not bill it. That's how it excludes stuff from future billings that are marked as run once. So leave that blank. The software will fill it in once it's been invoiced for the first time. We can track when this is being delivered. So maybe let's say this is being delivered tomorrow. And you can see when I set my delivery date, it also sets my next bill date to match. The next bill date is when you're basically telling our software when this should be invoiced. What's the starting of the billing? So if we're delivering this on the 22nd, I want the billing to start on the 22nd. And then if my billing end date was the 28th for my 28-day cycle, this unit, if it was prorated, would be invoiced from 8/22 to 8/28. It would be a small invoice, but then my next billing cycle, the next 28 days, it would be a full month invoice. Now, we have a location field for each individual piece of equipment. This location can show up on the invoice that goes to QuickBooks. So obviously, if you're doing something like roll-offs or portable toilets, something where you are managing deliveries or setting the unit, stuff like that, location is great for placement instructions. Set next to a construction trailer on northeast corner or in the field to the right of the rig, something like that. You could also use it for short, decisive driving directions, something like that, as well as just general notes. Maybe you don't need to track individual locations of equipment on one order. Maybe you just need an extra spot for some notes that are going to carry over into QuickBooks. The location field will do that. Now at the bottom of the screen here we have transaction notes, delivery notes, and pickup notes. These different areas, the delivery and pickup notes, will print out on our delivery and pickup tickets that you can print right up here in the top right of the software. So if I put in delivery notes, pick a driver and a date, that'll all show up on a delivery ticket if I print it. The transaction notes are internal. Those are just going to stay for reference right here on this transaction. Now, right now what we have is pretty much everything is that we have the minimum entered that we need to create a rental transaction. And as you probably all know by now, there's no save button in the service program, so we're just going to hit close and that'll save this order. If I go to items rented, or if I went to rental info, items currently rented, both get you to the same spot. This will show me everything I currently have out on rent in the field. It'll give me an estimated kind of monthly total at the bottom for everything. And we see invoice number 11 on here 2 times, and it's not a duplication. It shows twice just because we have 2 items on that transaction. We have the delivery and we have the actual piece of equipment. So you could actually double-click on this number. Either one of them will open up the same rental transaction to see all the details again. If you plan on using barcodes with our software where you're scanning out what you're renting while you're kind of like in front of your computer with a barcode reader, you would hit Use Barcode, and this is going to bring up a little pop-up window that you can hit Enter a Rental, and then you would start scanning the barcodes, and then that will match up to the serial number on that rental inventory list and put that piece of equipment on this rental transaction. You can also scan when returning. If you go to return mode here, we could then put in a date returned. Do we want to invoice when we're returning the items? Yes or no, we just check it or uncheck it. And then we would just start scanning barcodes. And that those would then go through our software and mark each one of those as returned and take them off rent and invoice them if we have it to be marked as invoice on return. So let's run through the first scenario I want to look at when we're talking about billing. Would be, let's do like a 28-day billing where we're billing in the rears for the last 28 days, and we'll just use the billing example that I've been using so far. The billing period is 8/1 to 8/28. So let's assume it's the 28th of August. We come into the office, and now we need to run our billing and go to QuickBooks. We can go to Rental Info, Billing, Run Billing. The first thing we have to do is tell our software what is the ending date of this billing period. And so we're going to pick the 28th. We would tell the software how many days are in your billing cycle. So this is the only spot you program in, whether you do calendar month billing or a 28-day billing. If you did calendar month billing, depending on the month, it's either going to be 30, 31 days. 28-day billing is always going to be 28 days. I could show the location in the description that'll go to QuickBooks. I can show the serial number. I also have the option to combine customer invoices. Now, what that means, if I look at my items rented, if I had like a invoice number 11 and an invoice number 12, both for Mike Ballack here, and let's say maybe they were at 2 different locations, so that's why we did 2 separate orders for him. When it's time to do monthly billing, our software can take those and combine them into one monthly invoice that goes to QuickBooks. Now, the only caveat is it has to be for the same customer. It will not work if it's the same customer but different job sites from QuickBooks. The next thing I would do is hit Generate Pre-Billing. It'll ask me, do I want to create basically the billing batch? I'll hit yes. If I go to View Pre-Billing, here is everything we're about to send into QuickBooks. Let me just get out some other stuff I was playing around with this morning. So this is the rental we entered, and you can see here it's being billed from 8/22 to 8/28. It's being prorated, so we're getting that $21.25 instead of the 85 for its first invoice. And then our delivery service or delivery fee is just a flat $15. It was marked to run once, so it's being included on this first billing. And then if we run billing again, it's actually not going to show up because we told it only to run once. We would put in our billing date up here. This is what we want. We can set this date, and that will control the date of the invoice that goes into QuickBooks. So it's a very flexible system. You're able to, let's say you were supposed to run billing on the 28th, but life gets in the way and you're not able to run billing until the 29th or maybe not even until September 1st, but you still want your invoices dated the 28th. We can accommodate that just by picking this date. Now all these will go in QuickBooks as the 28th as the invoice date, regardless of what day you're actually running the billing. So now if I go ahead and hit Post to QuickBooks, that's going to create these invoices in QuickBooks for me. Now once everything has been created in QuickBooks, my batch screen is going to clear itself out. This billing is finished. It's been sent to QuickBooks. We can now close it, and if we look in QuickBooks, let's see if I can go pull up this customer here. And here it is. So it's dated 8/28. It has my delivery fee and my pump on here with my dates. It has my charges. If you had told the software to put the location, and we had actually filled out the location would show up right here. So that's where that little location text box is going to fill in after the description, after the serial number, after the dates. Now let's click on items rented, and we're going to see that if we open up our rental transaction, our run once is filled in now, letting us know that it was billed and included on the invoicing that went out on the 28th. That's what this date represents. And as long as that date is filled in there and no one removes it, it will never show up on any future billing. Now we billed, remember we put in our ending date of that billing batch as the 28th, and we sent everything to QuickBooks. So now my next bill date is saying the 29th. It's one day after our ending date. So this has now been basically billed through the 28th. The starting of our next billing period is the 29th. That's the first day of the new billing period for the next 28 days. If we double-click on the serial number and we open up this item detail again, you can now see we've got some income generated in our metrics area. If we go to transactions, we'll see currently that this is rented out to this customer, and it references the order number. You can double-click that to open up that invoice. Billing history now shows me that this was billed, that it was a prorated. You know, we were only billing it for that short amount of time, and we have our total charge here. So everything's calculating like it should. It's perfect. Now, the other way we can do billing is simply by hitting Post to QuickBooks. This is what we would consider manual billing, where you're not having our software generate a billing batch at all. You basically are just saying, I want this as an invoice in QuickBooks right now the way it is. It will not do any type of calculation based on, you know, how long it's rented. It is literally taking this as a straight invoice and dumping it into QuickBooks, however the data is laid out here. If we needed it to prorate and calculate a charge based on how long it's rented, you have to run it through a billing batch. So if I go ahead and hit Post to QuickBooks, let's go ahead and do that here. And here it is. Now, when I hit Post to QuickBooks, like I said, it doesn't do any type of prorating. It's going to invoice everything how it is. We get a full $85. We get the full $15. But look at our dates here. We have 8/29, which is right. That's the next billing date, so that's where it's starting. We're billing it from 8/29, but it's using today's date. It looks a little backwards. Well, this date here is being automatically filled in because when doing manual billing, you have no way to control the ending date. Like when we did the billing batch, we put in an ending date, so that's how it got the correct date as the second date. Well, if we're doing a manual billing by just hitting Post to QuickBooks, to control the ending date, I have to put in an ending date in the field that says rental end date. So if I put in that we were billing that from the 29th, let's say, to end of September, the 30th, now if I hit Post to QuickBooks, close that invoice and open up the next one. Let's see. Now you can see dates are correct. It's showing from the 29th through the 30th, whatever I set in that ending date. So that's how you can quickly do a manual invoice, which is great for anything that needs prepayment or deposit, because we can quickly invoice this into QuickBooks, receive payment, run credit cards. Same if you're doing portable toilets or roll-offs and you're doing special events or weekend rentals. where you're picking it up or delivering it Friday, picking it up on Monday. You're charging them just like 175 bucks, for the weekend, flat rate, no prorating, none of that. You just hit post to QuickBooks. You can run their credit card right then and there when you enter the order, and then you could print the invoice out of QuickBooks and give it to the driver for when he goes to do the delivery. Now we have a couple ways we can create some reminders. If you're doing portable toilets and roll-offs, you may be able to use routing as well to manage this. I'm going to first show a way to use a task to create a reminder for a delivery or pickup or an exchange. Then I'll show the routing side. So right here in this rental transaction, again, I said it in the very beginning, you use this screen for everything you need to do with this customer for that piece of equipment. So if I need to create a reminder, I need to do billing, you're always kind of coming back to that rental transaction. But I could create a delivery task or an approval task or a follow-up, pickup, exchange. Let's say I needed to deliver this piece of equipment. I can go deliver task or delivery task, hit create task. It instantly opens up a new work order for me. It fills in the customer. It fills in that this is a rental delivery. It tells me that this is the piece of equipment we're delivering. I then could assign it to one of my guys and say we're delivering it, let's say tomorrow, put in my due date, and then just hit close. And I'm, again, back on my rental transaction. So what did that actually do? Well, if you click the home button in the top right of our software, it's going to take you to the task list. The task list is also the first screen you see when you open up the service program. And you can see here we've now got a task that's outlined in green. Tasks use a simple color coding system. Red is past due, yellow due today, green is in the future. And we cover that in our beginners class, pretty heavy going into tasks, how to create them, how to complete them. I'm not going to dive into that other than just show you now we have a work order that we could print out or we could sync mobile devices. The technician would see this on his handheld, could put in his notes, or if he's using QR codes, he could just scan it. It would find the work order. He could mark the unit as being delivered. It's a great way to keep track of the reminders for these deliveries, pickups. Now, these tasks can also be billable. So if you needed a separate invoice for any reason, the task can be invoiced separately from the rental as a separate invoice that will go into QuickBooks. It also can be closed out as non-billable, just going into the customer's history that the delivery was completed. And again, we can create those tasks just right inside that rental transaction in that drop-down here. The only difference between a delivery task and a pickup task is that it's going to say rental pickup here instead of rental delivery. Now, over here on the right, and I hope everyone sees this, I'll maybe scroll my screen a little further. We have an area where you have a select route, select frequency, and select date. This is mainly going to apply to anyone listening that does portable toilets or roll-offs or anything where you're needing to service this equipment on some sort of frequency. Portable toilet customers, you guys service the toilets once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, maybe once a month, maybe every other week. So let's walk through the scenario. Instead of using a task, let's put this piece of equipment on a route for delivery and then put it on a route for its service. So right here I can select route. So let's say I'm going to put it onto Route 1, and we're going to do a delivery, and our delivery date is going to be tomorrow. Put on route. Done. Now we also need to put it on to some sort of reoccurring schedule for service. So let's say it's getting serviced every other week for this example. So I can just go up here and say, okay, now it gets a biweekly service. It's being delivered on the 22nd, so probably the first service date is going to be the 5th. And I'm just assuming that by, it's biweekly, we wouldn't service it the following week. Maybe we'd skip one. And we can put on route. Again, just like the task, what did that actually do? if we go to the route schedule, we now can see we've got this customer on the schedule twice. The first one is for a delivery this Friday. The next one, in 2 Fridays, is for its first service. Now, I've set up a frequency called delivery. So if we double-click where it says delivery here, this is where I have all my frequencies for the different intervals that I can set up for these services. Weekly, I did once every 7 days. Bi-weekly, I did once every 14 days. Delivery and pickup do not reoccur. They're one-time things. You deliver it. You don't want to also deliver that same unit to that same customer the following week. It's impossible. So we do not have those set to reoccur at all, and we also have those marked to delete after posting the route, simply meaning once that delivery or pickup is completed, they're going to be deleted from the schedule, so they won't show up again. And just like the task, we're not going to take a deep dive into routing. We do have a full hour on routing and mapping we do on Mondays and Wednesdays. You can take a look at that class or some of our other videos to get an in-depth look at just the routing side of our software. But now we've got this schedule, or this customer on a schedule. After this delivery is done, what's going to happen is that's going to be removed, and you'd only be left with the service that would stay on the schedule from week to week until you picked up the equipment. Speaking of a pickup, let's walk through a return. So let's say this customer finally picks up or finally returns this piece of equipment. Or he calls in and says, hey, come pick up the equipment for me. Well, what we can do then is either we could create our pickup task and say we're picking it up, I don't know, the 18th, assign it to a driver, just like we did the delivery task, close. Or we could, maybe Route 2 is going to do the pickup, so we could put it on the route schedule for pickup. Again, we said, I believe, 918, put on route. So now those are the 2 ways we could schedule the pickup, either the task, which gives us basically a work order to go do that, or we put it on a route. Now, we also need to mark this as being returned. So right here in this return date, I can go in and say, okay, it's being returned on the 18th, return all. If you're doing partial returns where they're not returning every piece of equipment all at once, you have an individual date returned right here for each line item. Or maybe they're only returning this, and you could put in that one date instead of putting it in for everything. That way it still tracks what's still on rent and would still be billed if they didn't return everything. We'll hit return all. It asks me, do I want to invoice these items? So if you remember our first example, we billed this through the 28th of the month of August, and our next bill date was 8/29 is the starting of the new billing period. Well, 9/18, I think is, if I'm doing math right, that's not a full 28 days, so this would not get a full month invoice. So if I hit yes to invoice this, it's going to give me a prorated final billing. Now, that is assuming you're billing in the arrears where, you know, you're basically billing for the last 28 days. If you're billing in advance, you may have already billed them through the 28th of September and they're returning it early. It's your choice whether or not you want to invoice that. And in that scenario, if you've already billed in advance, it's going to tell you how much you should credit that customer if I tell it to invoice right here. You always have the option of hitting no. The equipment gets put back into your inventory to be re-rented. No final invoice is generated. The transaction's closed. It's done. I'm just going to hit yes here to show you that side. It says successful. Again, what did that actually do? So if I close my rental transaction, if I look at my items rented screen, nothing's currently rented anymore because I've returned it all. But I did generate a final invoice, so where did it go? Well, it actually goes to a screen and it kind of sits there in a pending queue to go to QuickBooks. So we can go to Rental Info, Billing, View Pending Transactions. This is now going to show me that this is basically being invoiced from the 29th to whenever we returned it on the 18th, and it gives me a prorated billing of $63.75. And just like before, I could put my billing date, hit Post to QuickBooks, it's done. So now, if we want to see a history of everything that we've rented out in the software, we have a screen for that in here under Rental Info. Rental Inventory Transactions is a historical list of every transaction that you've entered. So here, just like items currently rented, we see it twice just because there's 2 items on that particular transaction. It shows us that, it was returned on 9/18. The original delivery date was 8/22. The last billing date for the delivery fee was the 29th, and then this was actually billed out, through the 19th. So it has all that information. We can even double-click that invoice number again and pull up the history to see the full details. If you had any notes in here you needed to reference, all of that's available. Now, we have a couple little other options in here. I'm not going to go into detail on all of them, but the one I do want to highlight real quick are item groups or kits, where we can group a couple items together to help the entry process. If every time you do a rental order, you put on a piece of equipment, a delivery charge, a service charge, and maybe like a fuel surcharge, and maybe there's 4 or 5 items that go on every single transaction. We can kind of automate that or help you automate it. We can go to rental item groups here. So let's say I'm going to create a kit name. I'm just going to type in a name, and I'm going to call it a pump kit. And that starts with my rental item of the pump. I can select the same name again, and let's say we get some of this irrigation hose. And then there we also have a delivery fee. So we can even preset quantities. So maybe, in this scenario, the kit comes with 2 of these sections, so we could put that in, 1 delivery fee and 1 pump. And you can have multiple kits. So this may be, pump kit. This could be maybe the starter pump kit only has the pump and the delivery. So with those kits set up, you can do any combination of items, unlimited number of combinations, and each kit can have an unlimited number of items in them. But now if I go to enter a new rental, again, I'm going to pick a customer. This time I'm going to add a group item. I'm going to pick my pump kit, and let's say I need 1 of them, and I can then hit my plus sign here right next to it. Would you like to add this item group now? I'm going to hit yes. And now it just puts all those items on my transaction all at once for me, instead of having to go and pick those same 3 items every time. Just trying to help you with the data entry. Again, if we wanted to do our other kit, starter pump kit plus, then those are added. Let's say we wanted to add an item between pump and irrigation hose. Well, there's not a good way to do that unless I deleted everything on here and put them in one by one again in that order. Or we use this nice nifty little feature over here of the order column where I could reorder or renumber these. So if I make that, let's say I wanted this to be the new number 2. So I can rearrange the position of these items just by changing the order of them, the sort order. But if I wanted to add an item above delivery, I can just double-click on that number 2. And it's going to ask me, are you sure you want to insert a line? I can hit yes. Now I've got a blank line in here. Or I could go and put in an item. Now that takes us right up into about 10-15 minutes left of today's rental session. I've covered everything that's on my agenda that I wanted to go over with everyone today. If anyone has any specific questions, I'd be more than happy to field those now. Go ahead, Joe.
Got a question here on the tax rates, tax codes. One, how do you
Yeah.
set them up? And two, can you have two tax codes for one single rental item? In Texas, anything rented, diesel 50 horsepower or more, there is a 2%, they call it diesel tax, along with your regular sales tax.
You cannot have more than one tax code, and that's just a limitation by QuickBooks. But you can create a tax code that's a combination of multiple tax codes. So you may have, a special tax code set up that will track the regular tax rate plus the extra 2%. Now, I don't know if you have an accountant or someone familiar with QuickBooks to set those up. I'll show you how to set them up in QuickBooks, but when it comes to taxing, anything like that, I get real weary. Make sure that the way I'm showing you to set it up is the way that whoever's going to be running the books needs it for tax purposes at the end of the year. It is fairly simple to set up, but just a general disclaimer, I don't want the IRS coming after me.
Okay.
Under lists here in QuickBooks, we have a sales tax code list. This is step one, is we need to set up, we'll get rid of that one, and QuickBooks may have already done this, I'm not sure, but you should at least have a taxable and non-taxable. And that's what you can flag a item as being either taxable or non-taxable. Now, where we set up the different rates is under our item list. So if I go to item list here, and Joe, you and I think you should be familiar with this part. We went over this morning. We just need to do a item and go to new. And we should have a sales tax item. If you do not see sales tax item, you just have to go into your company preferences in QuickBooks under edit preferences, and there's an option for sales tax that you can say, yes, my company charges sales tax, and it'll show these items. The sales tax name I could have, we'll just call it, I'm just going to say standard. And this is your kind of sales tax rate at, let's just say 6%. And we're collecting for the agency, and we hit OK, and that creates our standard 6%. So if now we need to create the rate for that 2% for the diesel tax, we can go in, again, new tax, new item. Again, it's a sales tax item. This is diesel tax, and let's say it's 2%. So now we've got the two individual tax rates. Now we need to create a tax group. So we're going to, again, go to Item, New Item. We create a sales tax grouping. So this could be tax with diesel, and it is comprised of your standard sales tax rate and your diesel tax here. We give you a total of 8%, but you're still tracking the 6% standard tax for whatever agency. The reporting will still come out the same. Is this kind of what you were thinking of needing to set up?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So anything that does not need the diesel, you would just use like the standard tax rate. It would just be your 6%, and then anything you had to charge both, just in the service program, you would go and select the different tax rate of tax with diesel in this example. Now, once you've set all this up, you have to do 2 steps in the service program. You would hit Update QuickBooks. We would have to first reload our sales tax in the lower half of the menu. And then we would want to hit Update Only Inventory, and that's going to bring over those new sales tax items into our item list so we can then use them on those rental transactions. Now, in QuickBooks, there is what you're going to have to do for each of your customers. So let's go to our customer list. Is if we open up a customer, we just double-click on their name. You go to Sales Tax Settings. You'll have to go in for each customer and say that for this customer, do you charge sales tax? So you either pick taxable or no, this is a non-taxable customer. If they're non-taxable, you're going to have to put in their resale number or their tax certificate or EIN, their employer identification number. And then you could go in and set that, the standard tax rate for each of the customers. It's go in and pick standard or that whatever that flat percentage is of 6%, just as a default. And then if you're ever renting something out to this customer that needs the diesel tax in the service program, you would just change it from standard to tax with diesel, just for that one time. Otherwise, it would just default to standard tax rate for your 6% or whatever your regular percentage is. Anything else, Joe, or did that answer your question?
No, that took care of everything for me.
Perfect. If there's no other questions, I appreciate everyone taking the time to sit in on. Oh, please go right ahead.
When we're entering the rental, well, actually after I guess we've entered the rental, we have obviously not live in a perfect world. We have people who pay in advance, like 3 months, 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also have people who are late on their payments, but they want to see each month charge broken down on the invoice. How do we do those things?
Well, if anyone is late on payments, you should just print them a statement out of QuickBooks, which would itemize everything that they're past due on that's not been received. So it would detail out any of the invoicing from the service program from the prior months of all the different rental billings. And
I'll give you an example out of that. If today I'm going to make an invoice, we're just starting with the service program now. We've been using something different, not even QuickBooks priorly. So I want to make an invoice for someone in the new program, and I'm going to bill from 7/8 to 8/8. How am I going to be able to do that in this program without interfering and changing all the other dates? Because when we batch bill, it seems to change that end date to every single invoice ends up with that.
Correct. With the way our software does batch billing, it bills everybody at one time. Everybody that has something rented gets billed all at one time. If you don't want the service program to do that, we have to set up billing groups. So if you go into enter a rental, let's go in here and so we're in our rental transaction. We've got our pump or your piece of equipment. You have billing groups. So, and this just kind of depends on if I rent something out today on the 21st, you don't want to bill me again until the 21st of next month.
Exactly.
Maybe. So we would need to create 31 different billing groups here, or you create 30 different billing groups. And since I'm renting it out on the 21st, I would go in group 21. On the 21st day of every month, you would run billing for group 21. That would only generate that batch billing for those customers in that group. So when you go to run your billing, you pick.
So I would have to put each of our customers from the old system into this new system under an individual group and then run a bill on every single one of those customers because all of them like fluctuate days.
Yep.
Okay.
You either do that and set it up kind of how you were doing it so that you can, you basically are billing every single day of the week. You run a billing for the, today you're doing group 21. Tomorrow you come in, you do group 22, which would, invoice anything that you rented out today plus anything you rented out 22 days or 30 days ago.
Okay.
Now, if you're able to have some flexibility with your customers, I advise kind of moving away from it just because it's complicated and it's a hassle to do that billing every day. It's much easier if once a month you just go and hit one button, generate your pre-billing, and it bills everybody all at once.
Okay.
If you can get away with that with your customers, I suggest trying to move that way.
Okay. What about when we have multiple items in our rental that we're putting on there, and they might have them on different dates? For example, we do gas taps all over the place. They might get one toilet Monday, one Thursday, 3 the following Wednesday. All of those dates have to be documented, and every single line item is going to have a different date, but they all have to be on there with their PO numbers and those specific dates, or else it won't work. They won't accept the invoice. Is there a way to do that?
Yeah,
because
I mean,
the same.
have you, I don't mean to sound mean, but have you looked at the software yet?
Yeah, we've been playing with it. This is probably our 6th or 7th thing we went through. We've called. We've been on the phone with you guys. It seems like every time we have this exact same question, we're still not hitting an answer. They just keep telling us we'll go to rental, programming, training, call this person. It's been getting pushed for a week and a half.
Have you guys purchased any of the private training?
No, we've been doing this group, and then whenever we've been signing up for different ones, there's been nobody else on there, so we've been able to ask whatever we want. But they keep directing us to the diagram photos, but the diagram photo isn't going to show me how to make each line item have a different end billing date.
Yeah, now, right here, I mean, every line item has this is the starting date for the billing. When it's going to be billed next, and then each line item can have an individual PO number, or you can have a blanket PO on the header here for everything on this transaction. Now, if you want it all to be billed, I mean, in this case, this customer rented it out on the 21st. So let's say 4 days, 5 days later, you come in and you have to rent out another pump or another portable toilet or whatever the case may be. This is now being delivered on, let's say, the 26th, so its billing is starting on the 26th. Now, we have this in Group 21, which means you're going to bill everything, even though it was delivered on different dates, you'll bill it all at once. If you need to bill it separately, you have to do a new rental transaction for each piece of equipment.
Okay.
That way you can put those individual pieces of equipment into different billing groups. If this had to be in Group 26, so it was invoiced on the 26th and not on the 21st, you'd have to create a new rental and put that in Group 26 to the same customer.
So they'd never end up on the same bill for 1 day a month then?
Yeah. If you want them on the same bill, even though they were delivered at different dates, then you set it up like I have it right here.
Okay.
Basically the first piece of equipment is going to control what billing group it's in, and if we rent something out September 4th, it's still going to be billed in Group 21, and that one that you rented out on the 4th may be prorated to get it onto the same billing cycle as the rest of the pieces of the equipment here.
Okay, so it's either do it individual or just explain to the company that we're billing on this date and everything's going to prorate and it'll all equal out in the end anyway, but that'll always be the end date for every single thing on there. I mean, because we get, some of them have 20, 30, 40 rentals all in 1 month's bill. Okay.
And this, I think doing it on one transaction is going to be the easiest, and just explain to your customer that, hey, you called us on the 21st, so that's now you initiated the first order for the first unit on the 21st, so that's your billing group now. Anything else you rent after that just gets prorated, so the first one will be a little less, but then your next billing, everything's being billed a full month together.
Okay. I understand now.
Perfect.
That clears a lot off, because I really didn't exactly understand that it wasn't capable of doing what we're doing on an Invoices and estimates program that we were using before. So that clears up pretty much everything I was confused about.
Good. Glad. I think we just hit the end of the time here. I have to clear the meeting channel for our next group of people coming in. I do appreciate, again, everyone coming, taking the time out of your day to sit through this. Anything else you need, just let us know. Otherwise, have a great afternoon, and we'll see you hopefully in the classes tomorrow or next week. Take care.
Thank you.